BibleStudyCam, and I want to welcome you to this live stream event. Whether you're tuning in on Twitter or Periscope at BibleStudyCam, whether you're on Facebook.com/reflective Bible study, whether you're on YouTube at The Online Preacher, or even at theonlinepreacher.com/live, wherever you happen to be tuning in, I want to thank you for tuning in and welcome you to this morning's Bible Study Insight. And this morning, we're going to be looking again at the next portion of this illustration Jesus gives in Matthew chapter 25. And the illustration starts in verse 14. And this morning, we're going to move all the way through verse 27. The first morning, 2 mornings ago, we focused in on the first 2 verses. And then yesterday morning, we focused in on the second portion of this event. And now, let's read from the beginning of the parable to give us context, but then focus in on what happens when the master returns. So this is Matthew chapter 25, and we're going to start in verse 14, and I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on his trip. Now that was what we focused in on 2 mornings ago. Now let's continue. Verse 16, the servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. This is what we focused in on yesterday. But let's continue and find out what happens when the master returns, starting in verse 19. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Verse 22, the servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you didn't plant..." Oh, wait, I skipped a line there. Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back." But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Let's stop reading here for a moment. As we continue in this illustration, kind of picking up on what we focused in on yesterday with the different ways of utilizing money. It's interesting because when the master returns, he draws our attention onto 2 respectable uses for money and one of the worst things you could do with money. The 2 respectable uses for money would be investing and earning. Now, in the context of this illustration, investing could be investing in others, investing in some other business, investing in some other opportunity, something like that, which we could understand to be, say, what the first individual did. And this investing is something that is a great use of money because it puts the money to work, earning more. And the second illustration, or the second use for money, is earning. And for the cases of this illustration, investing, or I should say earning is trading time, energy, effort, some type of a skill that you have for money. Now, on one hand, some people might say that's not a good use of money because there's a lot of people being exploited and not being paid what they're worth. And that's true. But that's not the money's issue, you might say. That's not an issue with the system. That's more of an issue that's like a different economical issue. But instead, when we strictly are looking at money, when we're strictly looking at the uses of money, investing in others or investing in ourselves to gain more skills, that is a great use of money. And going to work, earning money, trading your skills for some type of a dollar, that is also a good use of money. And those two uses of money, the master praises, and in his praises, it's amazing because he says, you have been faithful in handling this small amount. This bag of silver, this is a small amount in the master's eyes. And because you have been faithful in handling this small amount, I will give you many more responsibilities. In contrast to this, the worst thing that could be done with money is nothing. The worst thing that could be done with money is nothing because by itself, money has no use or utility. Now, back in the days when money was made out of gold, then, and silver and some other metals, when it was that, you could say, money had some type of utility because there was a metal that you could melt down and use for something else if you needed. But today's day and age, money is some small silver discs of different materials or some like cloth paper like substance. And money, if you're not using it for something, if you're not using it to exchange for a good or a service or some type of action or activity, that money is useless. It's just going to collect dust. It's just going to sit there. Money was made to flow. There's so many water metaphors with money that it's amazing that if water remains stagnant, if there's no inlet or outlet, then if water has no inlet or outlet, if it's just kind of collected in a pool, it'll become stagnant or a marsh or a bog or some, like, it's going to not be that clean water. And if money doesn't flow, then it becomes stale and useless and just has no value either. But in contrast, when money is used the way that it was intended to be used, then it has value. And it's amazing because Jesus draws our attention in this parable that when we are using money at the highest levels, investing in others, investing in ourselves, and focusing on earning more, on doing something for someone else that brings them value, and that value that you bring them, they say thank you by giving you some money in return, that is the highest use of money. That's the way that our economy was designed to function. But Jesus isn't done sharing. There's a little bit more left in this parable. But for that, we're going to have to wait until tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to wrap up the conclusion of this parable and discover a challenge that Jesus shares that many might not want to think about, but something that we see happening in the world around us today. So whether you're tuning in on Twitter or Periscope at BibleStudyCam, whether you're on Facebook.com/Reflective Bible Study, whether you're on YouTube at The Online Preacher, wherever you happen to be tuning in and watching this, whether you're on live or on replay, first off, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing. And if I've shared something in this message, first off, thank you. First off, thank you for sharing this message forward, because if you were blessed by it, I have a strong suspicion that you know somebody who would benefit from it. And if I missed drawing our attention to something in this parable or in this passage that we focused in on, then jump into any one of the comments, whether it's commenting on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you happen to see a comment box, jump in and leave a response. When this live stream ends, I'll jump in and interact with you, and let's keep this conversation going. I know Periscope's chat box will end when this live stream ends, but any one of the other places, jump in and leave a response, and let's keep this conversation going, as together, while we're separated physically, we can stay connected digitally and keeping our eyes and our hearts and our minds and our perspectives focused beyond today and onto eternity. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow morning to wrap up this parable and discover the most amazing truth and challenge that we can discover from it. So I'll see you then.